The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was wrestling Emily's cereal bowl away from the edge of the table. She was 4 and everything was a negotiation. Through the kitchen window, I watched a man in his 40s direct the movers with small, efficient gestures, no stress lines around his mouth, no frustration when they nearly dropped a dresser down the porch steps. By evening, he was at my door with a homemade pie on a plain white plate. "Daniel," he said, extending his hand. His palm was neither warm nor cold, just present. Thought I'd introduce myself. Emily peeked around my leg, and he crouched to her level with practiced ease. "Hello there." His smile was pleasant and completely symmetrical, like something rendered by computer animation. "Thank you for these," I said, accepting the plate. "I'm Rachel. This is Emily. Happy to be neighbors," he replied. And there was nothing wrong with the words, nothing off about his tone. But standing in my doorway, I felt like I was talking to a photograph of a person rather than the person himself. The first week, Daniel was helpful in ways that should have been comforting. When my car wouldn't start, he appeared with jumper cables before I'd even called for help. When Emily's ball rolled into his yard, he returned it with that same pleasant, frictionless smile. He never seemed annoyed or inconvenienced. He never seemed to feel anything. I started noticing it during small emergencies. Emily fell off the swing set one afternoon, scraping her knee badly enough to bleed. I rushed over, heart hammering, but before I reached her, I glanced at Daniel watering his garden next door. He'd seen it happen, I know he had, but he simply continued his task, the hose spraying in gentle arcs across the roses, his expression unchanged. When I scooped Emily up and she wailed against my shoulder, he looked over and nodded once. "Kids fall," he said mildly. "It's what they do." Something in his calm certainty made my own panic feel excessive, almost theatrical. The shift started small. Emily lost her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she'd slept with since infancy. Normally, I would have torn the house apart. Instead, I found myself standing in her room, staring at the empty bed, feeling nothing sharper than vague acknowledgement. "We'll find it eventually," I heard myself say, my voice flat as paper. Emily cried, but the sound seemed to come from far away, muffled by invisible distance. That weekend, my mother called with news that my aunt had died. The woman who taught me to bake, who'd sent birthday cards every year without fail. I said, "Oh, that's unfortunate." The words emerged automatically, appropriate but hollow. My mother's voice cracked with grief on the other end, and I registered it the way you'd note rainfall. Information without impact. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and waited for sadness to arrive. It never did. Just a smooth, glassy emptiness where feeling should have been. Daniel invited us for dinner on Sunday. His house was impeccably organized, everything in its place with museum precision. The meal was perfectly adequate. Chicken, vegetables, rice. We ate in comfortable silence, punctuated only by Emily's occasional questions, which Daniel answered with patient neutrality. "Do you have family?" I asked, attempting conversation. "Not nearby," he said, cutting his chicken into identical squares. "Do you miss them?" He paused, fork suspended halfway to his mouth, and considered the question as if I'd asked him to solve a complex equation. "I don't think so," he said finally. "Missing requires investment," the phrase lodged in my mind like a splinter. Over the following weeks, I watched myself flatten. Emily brought home a painting from preschool, covered in enthusiastic swirls of color. I taped it to the refrigerator and felt nothing. No pride. No joy. Just the mechanical completion of an expected maternal response. When my boss called to tell me I'd gotten the promotion I'd worked toward for 2 years, I thanked her politely and hung up. The news sat in my mind like a stone in still water, creating no ripples. Emily started spending more time at Daniel's house. I'd find her on his porch, helping him organize his tool shed or sitting quietly while he read. She stopped having tantrums, stopped laughing her wild, uninhibited 4-year-old laugh. She became calm, agreeable, empty. I should have been terrified. Some distant part of me recognized this as wrong, as catastrophic. But terror requires emotional capacity, and mine was draining away like water through cupped hands. One evening, Emily wandered into traffic. I was watching from the porch and saw the car approaching, saw her small figure stepping off the curb. My body didn't move, my heart didn't accelerate. I observed the scene with detached interest, the way you'd watch a documentary about strangers. The car stopped inches from her. The driver leaped out, screaming, shaking. Emily walked back to the sidewalk, unfazed. The driver turned to me, face twisted with rage and fear. "What's wrong with you? Your daughter almost died." I looked at Emily, perfectly fine, then back at the driver. "But she didn't," I said reasonably. The words were true. Why was this person so agitated? Daniel appeared beside me, materializing from his yard like condensation forming on glass. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and the touch was neither heavy nor light, just there. "People overreact," he said softly. "Everything's fine." And he was right, everything was fine. The driver eventually left, still shouting about how irresponsible I was as a mother, but the noise meant nothing. Just sounds without significance. That night, I tucked Emily into bed. She looked up at me with eyes that had once sparkled with mischief and wonder. Now they were calm pools reflecting nothing back. "Mommy, do you love me?" she asked. I opened my mouth to say yes, to say of course, to say more than anything, but the words wouldn't form. Not because I didn't want to say them, but because I couldn't locate the feeling they were supposed to carry. Love existed as a concept, a word I understood intellectually, but the actual sensation had evaporated. "Yes," I finally said, and the word was perfectly hollow. She nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes. I stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, and felt the last remnants of myself dissolving like sugar in water. Through the window, I could see Daniel's house, every light burning with steady, unwavering brightness. Tomorrow, we would have dinner there again. Emily would help him organize something. I'd sit quietly, appropriately, and the three of us would exist in perfect, terrible harmony. I took the substitute teaching position in Millbrook because I needed the money, and the commute was 20 minutes shorter than my last job. Small town, decent pay, temporary assignment covering a maternity leave. 6 weeks, maybe 8. Simple enough. The first morning should have warned me. I asked my 11th graders what they thought about the ending of The Great Gatsby. Hands rose in eerie synchrony, as if commanded by one invisible conductor. Every answer was correct but dead. "Gatsby's death represents unattainable aspiration," said one. "The green light is hope," another added. Their voices, toneless and perfectly measured, carried no pulse of belief. "But what about your own thoughts?" I prodded. "Do you think Gatsby deserved it?" The silence that followed wasn't shy. It was bottomless. They stared, not blankly but evenly, the way an unplugged television reflects the room around it. Then a boy in the back said, "I think what everyone thinks, Mr. Harrison." At lunch in the faculty lounge, I expected the usual: complaints about budgets and parents, gossip about administrators. Instead, the conversation drifted like low static. Mrs. Perez said the new curriculum was fine. Mr. Oakes smiled and said it was the right direction. Even their laughter had no contour. "What do you think about cutting To Kill a Mockingbird from the list?" I asked. That stirred some arguments elsewhere. All 4 of them turned toward me, calm and unified like compass needles aligning to north. "It makes sense," Mrs. Perez said. "Everyone agrees. But you, personally, do you agree?" She paused mid-sip of coffee. The movement froze for a fraction of a breath, as though identity itself flickered. Then she smiled again. "Of course. I always do." The days accumulated in smooth repetition. The town's beauty dulled into frightening perfection. Every lawn trimmed the same height. Every window curtain drawn to the same level. I saw people talking on porches, nodding in steady rhythm, as if syncopated by a single unseen beat. No raised voices, no laughter, no tears. The dogs didn't bark. Even the wind seemed reluctant to disturb the stillness. At night, under the streetlights, I swear I saw neighbors standing perfectly still in their yards. Just standing, facing their houses, waiting for something I couldn't see. By the third week, sleep became impossible. The silence followed me everywhere. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was the absence of difference. Every conversation, every gesture, every smile perfectly aligned. Endless agreement forming a harmony so flawless it became monstrous. Desperate, I tried to provoke them. During class, I declared Shakespeare was a plagiarist who fabricated his career. I made it deliberately ridiculous. My students looked at me serenely. One after another, they echoed, "That's an interesting point. I can see why you'd believe that." Another chimed in, "Yes, it makes sense." Their tones were identical, measured like metronomes ticking in synchronicity. I shouted. I begged them to disagree. The air in the room thickened, not tense, but dense, like the atmosphere before fainting. Then they all smiled at once, not mockingly, not cruelly, just acceptingly. And in that moment, something flickered behind those smiles. It was a faint shimmer, like a reflection in deep water, something that watched through them. I left the building at noon and drove to the highway out of town. My heart thundered. I passed the welcome sign. Millbrook, where harmony exists. The car slowed, not from traffic. My foot stayed on the gas, but the vehicle gently coasted to a stop. The street around me was empty except for a crow perched on a power line. When I opened the door to get out, it didn't move. I lifted one foot toward the asphalt and froze. I couldn't move forward. I told my legs to step. They refused. My body simply waited, engine idling. A calmness spread through me. I was not peace, but erasure. The edges of my thoughts blurred like ink bleeding through paper. I don't remember turning the car around, but I did. The road led back into town, and the moment I passed the welcome sign again, the pressure vanished. My limbs worked. My breath returned. The next morning, I taught as usual. My voice spoke where I had not willed it to. My students answered flawlessly. Between sentences, when the fluorescent lights hummed and the clock's hands ticked forward, I thought I heard something whispering just beyond hearing. Like soft consonants forming an endless chain of agreement, I tried again to pack that evening. Tried to leave. My hands folded the clothes, yes, but only to place them neatly back into drawers. My body sat at the table and opened a fresh lesson plan. I watched myself write without intention. The pen moved. The words appeared. When I finished, I read what I'd written. Every page contained a single sentence in steady handwriting. "We understand you now." The air vibrated faintly. A presence, something vast and patient, settled around me. Not outside, inside. In the morning, as I walked into class, the students were already waiting, upright and silent. Their faces glowed faintly as if lit from within. "You stayed," one of them said, serene and confident. "Yes," I heard myself answer. The word left my mouth without permission. Their faint smiles deepened. "Good, it's easier once you stop choosing." The silence that followed was infinite. I felt my last thought dissolve like sugar in warm water. The clock ticked, slow and certain, marking the rhythm of my surrender. Now when I speak, my words are perfect, smooth, harmonious. The students agree, the town agrees. And the only thing left inside me that still feels like me is the terrified whisper repeating in some forgotten corner of my skull. "Please, someone, disagree with me." William Hernandez had been driving the 47 bus route for 11 years. And this morning felt exactly like the 10,000 mornings before it. The pre-dawn darkness pressed against the windshield like black velvet. His hands found the ignition without thought. The engine rumbled to life, a mechanical heartbeat that matched his own steady pulse. 20 minutes into his shift, somewhere between Maple Street and the shopping district, William realized something was wrong. He couldn't remember deciding to turn left at the intersection. The wheel had simply moved, his hands guiding it with practiced precision, but there had been no moment of choice. No instant where his mind weighed options and selected one. The turn had happened through him, not by him. William tried to recall his morning routine. Waking up, shower, breakfast. Each action arrived in his memory as a completed fact, but the actual experience of choosing them was absent. Like watching a recording of someone else's life, except he knew it was his body, his apartment, his coffee mug with the chipped handle. "Morning, William," Mrs. Patterson said as she boarded at Fifth Avenue, her grocery bags rustling like autumn leaves. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson," his voice replied. Warm, friendly, automatic. He hadn't decided to speak. The words had simply emerged, perfectly appropriate, utterly empty of intention. Terror bloomed in his chest, cold and crystalline. William tried to grip the steering wheel differently, to feel the texture of the rubber, to make a conscious choice about pressure and position. But his hands remained exactly as they were, relaxed and competent, executing movements he couldn't command. The bus glided through traffic like a boat on glass-smooth water. Every turn, every stop, every acceleration flowed within human perfection. William watched his body navigate construction zones and merge into traffic with seamless grace. He was a passenger in his own flesh. Try something small, he thought desperately. Just tap your finger. Move one finger. His hands remained motionless on the wheel, perfectly positioned at 10 and 2. Blink twice. Clear your throat. Do anything that isn't part of the script. Nothing. His body breathed evenly, his eyes tracked the road with mechanical efficiency. And somewhere deep inside, William screamed into a soundless void. The morning stretched on like a nightmare playing at quarter speed. Passengers boarded and disembarked. His mouth made small talk, his hands accepted fares, his feet worked the pedals with balletic precision. Every action was correct. Every response was appropriate. But William himself had become a witness, consciousness trapped behind glass, watching the performance of a life he could no longer steer. He tried to drive past a scheduled stop. The thought formed clearly: keep going, don't stop. Break the pattern. The bus slowed smoothly, pulling to the curb with practiced ease. His hand moved to open the doors. 3 passengers boarded. His voice greeted them with calibrated pleasantness. At lunch, his body drove to the usual parking lot behind the depot. His hands unwrapped the sandwich his wife had made. Turkey on wheat. The same sandwich he'd eaten every Tuesday for 3 years. His jaw chewed, his throat swallowed. The taste registered as information, nothing more. William tried to throw the sandwich away half-eaten, tried to stand up, tried to scream. His body finished every bite, wadded the plastic wrap into a tidy ball, and deposited it in the trash bin. Then his legs carried him back to the bus, and the afternoon route began. The horror wasn't the lack of control. The horror was the perfection of it. His body knew the route better than his conscious mind ever had. It anticipated traffic patterns, adjusted for weather conditions, maintained ideal following distances. It was a superior driver, unencumbered by hesitation or doubt. I'm not needed, William realized. The thought arrived like a guillotine blade. I'm already gone. By evening, his body piloted the bus back to the depot with flawless timing. His hands completed the inspection checklist. His voice exchanged pleasantries with the night dispatcher. His feet carried him to his car, and his fingers turned the key. The drive home was perfect, every lane change optimal, every stop sign respected. His body was a magnificent machine, and William was just the awareness trapped inside it, a ghost haunting his own skull. When he pulled into his driveway, his wife Sarah was watering the garden. His body waved. She waved back, smiling. His legs walked to the front door. His hand turned the knob. And somewhere in the vast emptiness where his agency used to live, William understood with crystalline certainty that tomorrow morning, his body would wake at 5:15 a.m. It would shower, dress, eat breakfast, and drive to the depot. It would execute the route with inhuman perfection, and he would watch, helpless and screaming, as his life continued without him.